software update on my phone. Okay, so rapport and communication. So rapport is a key to successful communication. However, communication involves far more than just what we say. I was watching you guys in action. You're all natural rapport builders. So we're going to be breaking down exactly what you do. So we take meaning from the three aspects of behaviour. So the content, the words that we say, the voice quality, so the volume, the pitch, the tone, etc. And then also the non-verbals, our facial expressions, our gestures, how we sit, how we hold our body. So we're kind of just skimming the surface with this, because actually this is a really deep topic and we could spend hours and hours, days and days, if not years and years, which people have. However, they've done all of the hard work for us, so we're just going to skim the surface. But what we are going to do is we're going to deep dive into the sensory-based words, and we're going to look at discovering what representational systems that you guys are using, as well as sort of linking that to what some of your young people might be using, which gives you more vocabulary to be able to connect with them on a deeper unconscious level. But at any point I don't make sense, please ask a question. So Albert's study. His study found that, I mean, we always think that it's words, don't we? It's what somebody said that's upset us, or it's what somebody said that made it memorable. Yeah,
it's the intention behind what they say.
It's how they've said it, yeah, and how they've said it. 55% of that is the non-verbals. So just, it can be the tiniest, minutest little thing. It can be the breathing rate has changed, it's got faster or slower. A dart from the eyes as they're talking to you. It's these little nuances that we unconsciously pick up. So when I say unconsciously, the things that we're just not aware of, we're not consciously aware of. We listen to the words, we're aware of the context of what's being said. However, all of those little unconscious things that are going on behind the scenes, typically we aren't aware of until we practice the awareness of it. Voice quality, 38%. Yeah, you can change your voice quality, change the meaning of a word, right? Same word, different voice quality, changes it completely. Like, just relax! No, just relax. Yeah, so why is it that rapport is important? That's what I want to ask you guys. What is it about rapport that is important? Why is it part of what Nudge does? Why is it part of something that we have to have as human beings to improve the quality of our lives?
When Sylvia and I were talking, I think because it was a dance related thing that you mentioned straight away, that immediately engaged me as a dance teacher, because I was like, so when you've got a connection and something in common, it makes you feel more comfortable, like this person gets something that I get.
Absolutely.
And you've got that common ground.
Yeah. But what about if there wasn't something in common? What about if you're working with the young people who a young person that on paper is a complete opposite to that? We sometimes find ourselves sort of like digging, oh, what can I link what I like to what they like? Ever noticed yourself doing that before? You know, we must have something, there must be something, or even on a session, it's like you're searching for something. Now, it involves the ability of reducing the perceived difference. So people are most comfortable with people they perceive to be most like them. I mean, I worked in a school for 10 years and I've seen this on a daily basis. The same people, type of people hang around with similar people to them. You know, it's a classic thing. I see it in workplaces. Children are a good example because they're very sort of,
in the box.
Yeah, blatantly obvious. So gain rapport involves the ability to reduce that perceived difference at the unconscious level between you and the other person.
Okay.
So you know how I said about when we meet someone, we kind of immediately go to, what are they like me? What is it about them? Or we have that conversation and we think, I have nothing in common with them. We close the conversation down. We don't talk to them anymore. We know about them. We know I don't have any commonality, so I won't bother with them. But as practitioners, we need to be able to develop rapport with anyone and everyone, regardless of whether we share the same interests. Make sense? Yeah. Ever found yourself doing that, thinking, yeah, he's all right, but I don't really have an outcome with him, so I'm not going to talk to him. We're all guilty of it, yeah? be established by maintaining it at 4 different levels. So you'd already mentioned about having a similar interest with Sylvia. So you share common beliefs and values when it comes to the dance industry, right? What that does for your well-being and so on and so on. But rapport can also be established at the non-verbal rapport, where we match and mirror the body language of the person that we're talking to. Now, when you were in your little groups, you did that automatically. We are going to be doing it on purpose, all right, in a moment, so you can actually see it at work and notice the difference when it's not there. The voice, where we match the breathing rate, the tone, the pitch of the person that we're talking to. And then it's also at the language level, which is what we're going to dive into a little bit deeper today, where we can use language skills to match the process words, which are the predicates, which basically means that they reflect that person's representational system. Now, this is completely new to you. Don't worry, because this is what we're going to be covering today, okay? So it will make sense the more we go along. Representational system basically means how the person processes the sensory information, so like pictures, sounds, touch, taste, and which one of those is their preferred way of representing the world around them. So for example, you may, oh no, you may, this is why you buy a flip chart and not sheets of paper. Which like, flip chart is so hard to get hold of. It's literally something you can only find online. Establish this by something that is known as pacing. Now in my world and hypnotherapy world, this is like the key of everything. You know, without this you've got nothing. Pacing is where you are meeting the person where they are at. So for example, Nicola's story this morning about you met the person where they are at, they give you the finger, albeit on a piece of paper, but the way that you responded was at their level. You didn't bring in any hierarchy that put you at a different level to them, right? You didn't retreat that put you on a lower level to them. You just met them where they were at. As Charlotte had mentioned this morning, this very similar thing about you just meeting where the person was at. I can't remember if you shared a story about it now, but it's the same idea. So that young man who went to the GTA casino, you missed the story about that, but it's not really one you want to tell the world. However, because I joined in with where he was, that meant I was pacing, meeting where he's at, which means I can join in with his belief and values very quickly because I've met him where he's at. We're sharing the same belief, we're sharing the same interest. This stuff then just tends to happen naturally. But when we don't have that initial bond, when we don't have that initial liking to somebody that we might naturally do to someone who we just instantly naturally build rapport with, we have to pace. We have to consciously be aware of our own body language. We have to be aware of our non-verbals, our tone of voice, our pace. Okay? So we are meeting where they are to match and part of their ongoing experience. That's the key thing, is that everybody's experience of how they are in the world is very unique and different. No two people are the same. Reflect on what they know or assume to be true. So, Belinda, we're at Nudge Workshop today and you were sitting in that beautiful orange chair, and I love your orange nails. Matches the chair actually. Straight away she's smiling. Now if I was to come and be like, hey Belinda, I like the colour of your nails, I like the chair that you sat on. Do you feel the difference?
Yeah.
And all I've done is I've totally changed my breathing rate compared to her. I changed my body language. I wasn't matching her. So we're going to delve in a little bit of that. So what I want you to do is to go back in the partners that you were with and just purposely copy their body language, purposely copy their breathing rate, and just notice what it's like being that person on the receiving end. Okay, makes sense?
I've one time caught somebody mirroring me,
Yes.
and it was a bit of a sales pitch.
Yes.
And I noticed it and felt uncomfortable in that
Yes.
moment. So I think if you're subconsciously doing it,
Exactly.
but
We do it unconsciously anyway.
But as soon as I noticed it, I felt really
Yeah.
weird.
So the thing about, you know, building rapport with somebody is that it can't be obvious. It can't be obvious that you're copying their tone of voice if they're whispering to you. But how many times do we do it naturally without even being aware of what we're doing? Now imagine how much more powerful it would be if we had that awareness. Yeah? So get into your groups, and I'm turning that over so I don't keep going back to it, okay? Get back to your pairs, and then just purposely, so whoever wants to talk first, decide who's going to talk first, and the other person, the listener, is the person who's going to match and mirror their body language, their breathing rate, their tone of voice, just as much as you can. And just, I know it's kind of awkward and it feels uncomfortable, and yeah, in the sales world, this is why NLP sometimes gets a bad rap because of the way that it's used. However, it's meant to be the very subtle thing. So there's such a thing called actually crossover matching, which again, we don't need to go into too much detail today. I just want you guys to become aware of how much power you actually have to influence young people just through such a simple shift in your body language, a simple shift in your tone of voice, your pace, eye contact, like all of that kind of thing is really, really influential. And if we can, so the crossover is, so let's say if you were going to match a young person's body language, like if they're like maybe sat on the floor or whatever, instead of sitting on the floor, you know, you might lie down or you might lay on your arm or something, so you're still on the same level but you're in a different body position. Or like Belinda, so if I cross my right leg over, we'd be matching, but I do want a crossover matching, so instead I might just do this while I am.
Right, and that's how you make it
So
like
rather than making it look like a child copying a child in a game, it's just a bit more.
Yeah. So it's much more subtle. However, on the unconscious level, it's still building that same level of rapport. If you're breathing really fast and talking really fast because you're all hyped and upset, and I don't want to join in with that pace because I wouldn't be able to manage myself then, I might just do this.
Can I ask something? So I'm just thinking, if you've got a child lying on the sofa, can you do something, can you like stay on their level and everything, but almost try and get them to mirror you, so that you don't want, so I can't lie on the sofa as well, so I like kind of it might sit so that, and what you want is for them to feel a bit,
and lean against the chair.
You want them to feel like they need to sit up to engage with you rather than
so that's the outcome, to get them to sit up. So when you've got pacing, that's when you can go on to leading. You can only lead someone once you've got rapport. If you've got no rapport, there's absolutely no point. They're just going to kick back because there's no rapport. Have you noticed how, you know, when you've tried to get somebody to engage too quickly, push back, where if you'd have just spent maybe 5 or 10 more minutes just in that position where they were, it makes all the difference. So if I walk in and someone's laid on the sofa, I'll sit on the floor with my back against the chair, or I'll sit on the floor cross-legged. I'll always be eye-level contact as much as possible, because I want them to see my body language. I'm not bothered about them looking at me, you know, even if I'm always in their peripheral vision anyway. It doesn't have to be full-on eye contact. But if they're in the vicinity where they can see some sort of body language, and I get up and I go, oh, right, now we're there. What they're going to do, they're just going to immediately copy once the connection's there. So rapport, the definition for me is connection. It's having a connection at a deeper level than just that surface structure stuff.
and not being closed-minded, staying there for longer.
What's the rush? If the aim is to get them up so that you can then go on other something, if you miss out that bit, the whole thing's going to come collapsing down, isn't it? So rapport is literally building the foundation for the relationship that you are trying to achieve. And all of these, I'm pointing at the wrong page, but all of these little things that we're talking about influence that in a positive way. Again, it's about the little subtleties, you know, so maybe he's not straight away going in there with the body language. That's why I'm not spending much time on this, because for me, the easiest thing with the young people is the language, especially if you're on the other side of the door. If you're having to write them a letter or make them a video or something like that. The language that we're going to do, the sensory-based language, looking at their own the predicates, which will match whether they have a visual representation of the world. So this is based on NLP's learning styles. Again, if you've done teaching before, you'll be aware of these. But we are going to be, this is not just about how you teach somebody. Rushing ahead again.
Because we keep
Get off. Okay, what was that like for you two? How did you find that, matching and mirroring?
Yeah.
I felt like it was a little hard to fully listen when I was consciously trying.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And then it just felt more relaxed when I kind of thought,
Yeah.
oh, right, okay, I just relaxed into it, it was fine.
Yeah.
I don't know how you
Yeah, no,
felt.
absolutely. I was trying to copy, and then I'm not really, well, I say I'm not expressive with my hands, but they tend to be at this level. But you're quite up
I'm
here with your
all
hands.
over.
When I was trying to reply, I'm consciously thinking, raise your hand a little bit. And it just didn't quite feel right.
But how amazing though that it's now in your conscious awareness that just that little thing of bringing your hands in, for someone like Belinda who talks with the hands, is going to feel like you're really listening.
Yeah.
And that you're
Okay.
really engaged with it because you join in
And I
the same
didn't notice,
energy.
it wasn't
didn't
over
know
the
it.
top.
Right, okay.
Even
That's
though
good to know.
this is an exercise and I know you're doing it, I was,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I didn't really.
And it just shows how quickly we build rapport naturally anyway.
Mm.
And if we can start just to notice the skills that are actually going on there, we can model them to the young people as well.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I think it was kind of easy since we have very similar body language, but still, I'll try to focus in as to what is similar,
Yeah.
pretty much, and just try to be more aware of like how similar actually
Yeah.
we can be while
Yeah.
talking to each other.
Yeah, I mean, and remembering that it's, what was it, 55% of the non-verbals is what really builds rapport at an unconscious level. So although we're just skimming the surface of this today, there is, more research and stuff like that you guys can go and check out for yourselves. But it's a vital thing to start to become aware of. Now, it's not something that you can just develop overnight. So each and every single conversation that you have from this point forward, my advice would be start noticing the other person's body language. You're not just looking at the face, you've got the whole, you don't have to be like scanning them up and down. Use your peripheral vision. You can all look at me and still see my feet, right? Yeah? If we become more aware of what's actually in our awareness, what we can see, we can use that information consciously. So, if I'm going to just directly speak now to David, I'm just going to do it really subtly and just, it's really simple. But that's only because I became aware of his body language. If I didn't and I tried to talk to him like this, I mean, yeah, it's great, we're going to have that conversation, but when I do this, how much more engaging does that make you feel?
It did.
I feel bad now.
Yeah, so
Do you know what I mean? That's what
this
makes me
brings
think
us
that.
It's
in
actually
nicely.
interesting you bring up like with the sort of love aspect, since like I've read how, I mean, I guess in romantic relationships it's a bit different, how it's like, how does your partner show love?
Yeah.
And I mean, between partners, sure, like it's useful to know how the other one says I love you,
Yeah.
but even yeah, exactly, among students, just matching that, because it's like some people prefer compliments, some people prefer gifts, some people
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, for me, like that's the thing. I'm not an outwardly sort of emotional person, but I like doing nice things for the other person.
Yeah,
And a lot of people miss that you just doing a nice gesture for them is you showing you care. Like not everyone wants a compliment.
Exactly.
Some people
And
just
because it comes
want
back to
something.
the way that we represent, so each and every one of us have our own way of thinking and processing information. In the NLP world, it's called the map of the world, so how we manage our own territory, and it depends on how we interpret our own maps. And it's done through sensory-based language, because that's the way that we can only communicate through sensory-based language. And when we go through this, we'll come back to this conversation, all right, and you'll get where I'm coming from.
In a competition, and I had the feedback, and it said I was very articulate, but she didn't actually understand what I was trying to say. So she might be
You're very
fine.
articulate.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that again?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once once we've got some connection on a level of body language or, you know, the communication, what we're going to delve into a little bit more, one of those 4 levels, like a shared value, a shared belief, we can then use that to start leading. But if you haven't got one of those 4 connections, don't move on to the next level. Don't try and get them engaged in an activity if there's no rapport. Because even if it's something that they absolutely love, I mean, I took a girl, we planned to go-karting, but I didn't, when I picked her up, it was just like kind of bish bash bosh, like let's get there and blah blah. And that was a little bit different to how our session would normally start. So when we got there, she wasn't in the right frame of mind. She didn't end up doing it. And it was, I know exactly, it was because I didn't spend that time with her prior building that rapport. Like, we should have just sat down for 10 minutes, we, you know, just let her have a usual morning whinge. Then, because I tried to lead straight away, no chance. I didn't pace her. I didn't get the rapport elements in place. Those 4 points of, you know, the non-verbal. I didn't match and mirror anything, and I know this now looking back, but in the moment I was thinking about the outcome too much without having the foundation in place there. So yeah, know your outcome, but have your foundation before you set off for it. The massive generalisations, by the way, that we are looking into now. This is by no means limiting any person in any way, shape or form. So we all process the world through a different preferred representational system. Now we do all of these. We all have the ability to be a visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and through our smells and taste type of person. Now if we look at a kinesthetic type of person, and I want you to think about people who you might know, maybe some elements of yourself that can relate to this. So kinesthetic learners, they learn by doing. They want to act things out. Sometimes they speak slowly. They want to touch people to get their attention. I mean, I'm laughing because, you know, I just know so many people like this. And I am like this as well, like, honestly.
Not really, we're not.
And, you know, they're memorised by walking and seeing. Any kinesthetics starting to relate to this? Can't remember geography unless I've actually been there. Yeah, that's me. Can't follow a map, but I know which way I'm going. It relies on gut reactions. So this section here about managers. So that's basically someone who might employ you, might be a manager, and they're a kinesthetic type of person. You might see some of these similarities in their behaviour. So they're either full of success or there's a drama all the time, there's a fiasco. They've got difficulty changing their mind, they can be quite stubborn, it can be quite moody. A kinesthetic employee will prioritise according to feelings. Right, I know what I need to do, I'm going to do this first because that one just feels right. Not necessarily what's good for the business, but that feels right, so I'm going to do that first. So it's about those internal versions of the task before acting out on it. Need for physical comfort, to get bored easy. Performance can be mood dependent. How many people do you know who've made decisions based on their mood? When it comes to sending emails, not at all if possible. Many kinesthetics are very technophobe, or they have some idea that they're technophobe even though they're not, because we've all got smartphones now. And they prefer that personal touch. So if you've all got that friend who rings you rather than texts or emails you, that's it. Information, they like to receive information, well they don't like to receive information by PowerPoint. Unless you're going to make them laugh, unless you're going to entertain them. Start to think about some of the young people that you work with who would relate to this kind of stuff. Very few words. Again, kinesthetics are all about the feeling, how they feel about something. I mean, do you know that those type of people who might just walk in somewhere and be like, oh, I love it here, and you're like, what do you like about it? I don't know, it just feels right. You know, I could just feel it in my bones. Yeah. I mean, obviously this is an exaggerated version of the kinesthetic, okay? This is really just to bring it into your awareness of how we can categorise people, which I know we're not cattle, but it's about categorising them into certain specific areas that allows us to use the appropriate language to pace and lead them, okay? Always have that in the back of your mind. This is not about limiting anybody in any way. So their typical language will involve lots of movement. So move, get, hold, pick up. I'm going to run with it. Oh, that sounds cool. We had a heated argument. You know, I'm bored. I'm excited. I get what you mean. Catch you later.
Pretty much communication.
Visual communication. So if you are somebody that is a visual person, or you know somebody who is, they're generally neat and orderly. And again, you might cross over all three elements of this, okay? But there'll typically be one that is your strongest preferred one. So speak quite quickly, often have like a very fast breathing rate as well. A good long range planner, so very forward thinking, can see big picture out in the future type stuff. Very appearance orientated in terms of dress and presentation, so very visual people tend to always look nice, always dress smartly, will think about what they're wearing, will, you know, match the clothes properly, won't just chuck them on. They'll remember what was seen rather than heard. Very important to remember about young people. Usually are not distracted by noise. The auditory element is generally not, you know, it's not required, it's fine. You can work in noise, we'll often listen to music while they're working. May forget verbal instructions, so we'll have to write stuff down. These are the list people. These are the people that will carry a notebook around so they can write things down and see it and organise it, plan it. Would rather be read to. No, would rather read than be read to. You'll know someone when you go to read something like, oh, give us it here, I'll read it myself. And they've read it in like 10 seconds and you're just on the first line. That's me and my husband, he's very visual. Alright, so a manager who's a visual person likes people to look busy. Not bothered about what you're doing. What you're doing today, right? Okay, that's great. They will walk around, a little bit like micromanaging. They also like to give big pictures, so they have these big ideas that they'll present, but often they'll lack the detail. So if you work with somebody as a leader who's very visual, you'll love the fact that they're very sort of goals and outcome orientated, but the specifics of how to get there are often missing. And a visual employee will give graphs, charts, lots of colour on the presentations. I mean, you know, we'll print out stuff and put loads of colour on. I only use different coloured pens for those visual people. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to read my writing. You wouldn't be able to. There'd be no colour on this board whatsoever if I just done it to my learning style. But because I know that visual people need something to look at, the only reason why that's here. Email, few words will bullet point. Yeah, we all know those people, right? Typical language is see, get the picture, view, look, perspective, shadow, hidden, vision, overview. Do you see what I'm saying? See how you're all nodding? See what I'm saying? Yeah? Do you get what I mean? Okay. Auditory learners. Learn by listening. This is typically the format of how education is taught in school for auditory learners. So learn by listening, remember what is discussed rather than seen. We'll often speak in rhythmic patterns, so you know, might have the same tone when they're speaking. There's not much inflection to the voices because it might just be very monotone, stay the same all the way, no difference in their tone of voice at all throughout the entire presentation. We'll move their lips and pronounce the words that they read. So could just be reading quietly in their head, but then yet the lips are still going. Find difficulty in writing, are better at telling. Again, all just generalizations. Okay, so an auditory manager can be very assertive, can be very demanding, very rules type based person, and can feel very tactless, like there's no emotion there. So your partner's mum, she's likely to be very auditory. It's not that they don't have emotion, it's just their processing is in an auditory way. Likes the details, yeah, and can be to the 9th degree on details. An employee that's auditory is someone that will need to make sense of it before acting. I mean, I should have switched out employee for young person for this workshop. If you think about an auditory young person, they want all the information. one of my people that I've just finished with last term, very auditory. There was no point in me being how I would normally be just for myself, because that would not have worked with him. And I would not have built rapport with him had I not known this stuff. But by changing myself into an auditory processing way of doing things, made the situation so much easier. So they'll encourage questions, they'll ask, they want to know the ins and outs of the fact, basically. And they'll
give notice.
Yeah, lots of notice. We'll want to talk things through. So for the young person that I had who was very auditory, I would film what we were going to do beforehand. So I would go, like, basically doing a recce of the place we were going to go. I'd film it, get the people that were going to be in there on it. I know I shouldn't, but hey, film the ins and outs of it, what it looked like on the outside, the inside, here's the hallway, this is where the toilets are, oh, there's the kitchen. And I would share that video with him before we even went and done the activity. Worked like a dream. So he was very auditory, but then also visual as well. So I had to talk him through the video, but having something to see was also important. So again, we all cross over. You know, there's not one thing. But you do find that most people have a very strong individual preference. Alright, so information, yeah, massive PowerPoint, all in plain black writing that you can't hardly see is fine. Yeah, it'll just be the most boring PowerPoint I've ever seen. Typical language is think, know, interesting, fascinating, logical, very sort of academic type language often. I hear what you are saying, I understand what you are saying, talk to you later. Auditory language. Okay, so what I'm going to do is give you all a little self-assessment to do. And this is, I want you to find a space, spend a couple of minutes doing it, and all you're going to do is just go with the first answer. You're not going to think about the questions too much. If you feel like you could probably do all three answers, just pick the one that you're most likely to do. Any surprises for anybody?
I thought that I was a kinesthetic person, not to this depth, but I've learned about it before, but I was still interested to know. And then it was a total mix then.
Oh my god, you got the same as me.
Really?
Oh no, unless I've added wrong.
I think I've added
wrong.
Think about anybody else who you know and how they would respond to some of those questions. Can actually start to give you a little bit of an indication of, especially your loved ones, especially people that you're close to, you can start to think of how they might represent the world around them. And if theirs is very different to yours, how there might be some conflict sometimes in the way that you present your language based on your sensory profile to theirs. So, like, for example, me and my mum, I'm very, very kinesthetic. She is very, very visual. It's all about what it looks like, and I'm like what it feels like. Massive conflict in our language for a long time. It wasn't until I learned this stuff that I could put it to use, you know, to make conversations easier, have a bit of dialogue, because I would speak on her terms. So I would say, so it's like saying, I'll see you later, instead of I'll catch you later, or I see what you mean, man. Yeah, I get it. I see it. Whether I'm just like, yeah, I know what you mean. I get it. She's like, but you don't though. You need to see what I'm talking about. Okay, yeah, I see it. Just those simple little nuances can really break on the egg with somebody. My young auditory boy, again, massive generalisation, would go through something, and instead of saying, do you get it? Do you know what I mean? I would say, does that sound good? Does that sound okay? And I would have never said sound. That was never in my vocabulary until I learned this stuff. So I'm going to give you all some examples of the predicate. So the predicate are those little sentences, those little phrases that we would say naturally that reflect our representational system. So like the kinesthetic would say, I'll catch you later. The auditory person might say, I'll talk to you later. Again, big generalisation. The visual person might say, I'll see you later. These little things that we can pick up on, and the more we kind of hone in on the language, the more we can use that to our advantage. So have a scan through this,
Where is this yours?
and I want to grab.
No, it's fine.
Actually, wrong sheet.
Is that yours?
Not mine. I put
We need water in there, so it's fine. Keep holding on. So have a scan through this one first. Okay.
I guess I'm not coming back.
Hey?
And
I guess I'm not coming back.
just
goes.
Start to get your head around
That looks like it's been there for a while.
how the language can be categorised into the representational systems. Because when you're able to recognise these predicates and respond with them, you know, respond with the same sensory-based words from the same system as the person that you're working with, significantly enhances rapport. Because if you've got nothing in common with them, like, you know, background in dancing, then hey, you're still speaking the same language. Make sense? Do you get what I mean? Do you see what I mean? Does that sound good?
Autism rely on visual?
There's
Does
no
that-
one set thing.
Oh,
You can
okay.
have autism and be very kinesthetic or very auditory, or
Okay, so that
it doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
just what is that person's preferred way of experiencing the world around them.
Okay.
And sometimes when there's a diagnosis involved, is because one of those is to the extreme.
Yeah.
So an extreme kinesthetic person might have ADHD. An extreme auditory person might be classed as autistic. But an extreme visual person might be classed as autistic or OCD. I mean, you're effectively speaking their language. So when you present an idea or a task to a young person, you want to present it in their language, so you're speaking the same as them. Grab your pen, and you're just going to do this little exercise where you mark each phrase with a V for visual, A for auditory, or K. So I just want you to read each little predicate and then just mark which one it is without using your cheat sheet as much as possible. Because it's not about getting it right or wrong, it's about bringing this awareness to the language. So if you're not sure, just leave it blank and then we can discuss any at the end. All of those. So, it's like way too much work today. Alright, so has anybody got any questions on what we've done so far? Or has anybody had any sort of little, maybe it's like little epiphany moments that's made you realise why there might be some conflict with somebody that you've been around in the past, or where you just haven't been able to build rapport with somebody because it's not about whether you like them or don't like them, it's just there's just been no connection, there's been no interest there, and it's just been one of those, we just don't get on.
It's really interesting. Like, I've got a 13-year-old, so he's at that stage for holidays, doesn't want to do anything with me. Reverse psychology.
Typically, my husband's very visual but also very kinesthetic, so you'll know the people who have, you know, the crossovers are always going to be there, but it's working with that, the strongest preference. So if straight away you're thinking he must be very visual because of this, this and this, then it's likely that he is, but hear it in his language first to double check.
Okay.
And if he talks about big picture and wants to look at things and see things and that type of thing, then they're the biggest giveaways, those little nuances like that.
Yes, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything that's made them think about something? Anything they want to share or ask?
Can we go through a couple of these to check they were right?
Yeah.
So, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So, if it's got words that picture,
Yeah.
is that visual?
Yeah.
Because I was not sure what was kinesthetic, but I just went for the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So like warm-hearted is.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that is like tangible that you can feel,
Yeah.
or touch, is going to be kinesthetic. Or anything that involves movement is going to be kinesthetic.
Oh, okay.
It's all about how you feel. It's all about movement. Something like
With everything together. Right, okay.
where
Start
visual
from scratch. I wasn't sure on that one.
scratch.
Right.
That's kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure if it was visual. It's like
Yeah. Again, it's bringing the body into it, isn't it? You'll hear kinesthetics say things like, "Oh, I had a right go at her. It was a right heated eye." And they'll always bring some temperature of some sort into it. They'll always be hot or cold. They'll never just be at room temperature. I mean, I can only say so much about kinesthetics because that's my typical go-to. But I'm also very auditory as well. That's the next thing, and then visual is last. So it's very hard for me. I can't imagine like any sort of decorating or anything in our house is done by my husband because I cannot see it. Can't imagine it. I can feel it though. I know what it's gonna feel like. Oh,
I do find it quite interesting. Maybe exactly how it links with autism.
Mhm.
The different
Yeah.
sort of
I mean, if you
ways
think,
of being.
yeah, and
A lot of my
most-
students have also been visual, and that's when we've connected.
Yeah. Same with me when I worked in schools. It was very easy for me to work with the kinesthetics, who were typically the ones that were always in trouble because of behaviour. They would act out things, so rather than communicate with words, it would often be in behaviour with their body. And yeah, I was always the person that would have to deal with behaviour. And yeah, so we can create rapport very easily with people who are similar to us because they're coming from, they're speaking our language. So
Yeah, the students who have been just talking about all kinds of things, I'm just like, I'll listen, there is nothing here though. Like, I have no idea how to respond.
like there's no connection, right?
No,
Yeah,
I mean, it might be to do with the fact that most likely I'm autistic myself. So then trying to connect with someone who's just talking to you and they're not autistic and they're just fully auditive, I'm just like, can I just go home? I don't like this.
The easiest thing to do is to use all senses in your language as much as possible. So you can be very kinesthetic, kind of show somebody what you want them to learn, also talk them through, also give them the big picture stuff at the beginning. So it's that then you're suiting everybody's needs, which is the biggest thing in schools with teachers. So yeah, I've taught this stuff on a very sort of surface level, not even as deep as we did, but if they what tends to happen is that they'll want to fall in line with their own preferred system. You know, so they'll end up teaching from the way that they see the world, hence the communication.
As a dance teacher, it was easy for me to teach aesthetically.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had no real choice but to learn that way, although I did have visual and auditory in the lesson, it was obviously mainly kinesthetic.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And if, when you're teaching, one of the things that improves the teaching is actually being able to teach from all preferences. Now, there are those people who are very olfactory sensory based, so everything will be based on how something smells. People who go through sense of taste are often typically chefs or really big eaters. Everything is based on food, their emotional state is based on food, that type of thing. So, but again, it's going off on another tangent because that's another arena altogether. But yeah,
It's interesting though. It is really interesting.
so yeah.